different with it. Too involved to think you. They wanna keep it messy. You know my intuition. I got bars and eight, but never in a prison. Too far from my never know second listen. It's an optimism, it's an effect. You get it up. You see it as a piece of the flesh. I'm better. I don't need to try to reach for the west. Always keep it up. They wanna keep it messy. You know this is what you get when you're sitting as a fan. Everybody knows.
They love me. They love me.
And we're live.
And that was the cue, wasn't it? All right, we're live.
And
welcome everybody to Techsplanation 2.0, the new season of fun and enjoyment. Glad you're here with us. We're going to have a fun show today. We got a lot of guests joining us. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to play some games, and we'll probably throw some technology in there as well, because we are a tech show and we talk about technology. Let's kick it off by introducing everybody in the crew today. Joining us out of Colorado is Mr. Silas Pappas, new to the JB&A production team.
You know who it is.
That's true. That is true. All right. Coming from... Wait, did I hear somebody call out?
Nope. No. We're all good.
Oh, well, keep going, huh? Keep going. All right. All right, joining us as a guest today, we've got two, not one, but two, joining us from different parts of the country. First off, from Panopto, Chris Alibarujo. I got it right?
You sure did.
Yeah. He
Nice.
can be taught.
We're having issues. Hold on.
All right,
Sorry.
we're having issues. You want me to pause?
No, just for like 2 seconds. Yeah.
All
There he is.
Oh, he's in. Chris, thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
All right, and in studio, not in mine, but in the Folsom one, is Mr. Ron Rundell from Matrox.
Hey, everyone. Glad to be here.
Killer. All right, so we've got a quorum. Now, today we're going to cover a bunch of stuff. Obviously, there's been some really interesting announcements in the last couple weeks, things from Apple, things in the AI space. So we're going to try and hit a bunch of these topics. But The primary goal today is talk about how these technologies are going to be used in the educational space, and specific to lecture capture and all the fun things that I think both of your companies are knee deep into. Obviously, Chris being with Panopto, being the largest VMS out there for video management inside the education space, and Matrox having one of the premier hardware applications for the lecture capture space. So we're going to hit both of those things. Jordan, are we ready to go into articles first? We want to start there?
Yeah, we are. But we have a little video of what lecture capture is now.
Oh, yeah. No, this one's funny. Okay, so this is one of my favorite movies from my childhood and well into beyond. And I thought this perfectly sums up the world we live in now. I mean, okay, first off, if you haven't seen Real Genius, go rent it tonight. Pay the $2. It's funny, and it's got those great 80s soundtracks we all grew up on. But just the concept of watching the students all disappear, leave their recording devices behind, and then the teachers doing the same near the end. So I think that's kind of where we find ourselves now, right? Which is we've got this ability to not only ingest data remotely on demand, but now even, have it play out on demand and kind of be there, and everybody's in that space. So let's hit a little bit into some of the articles today, and we're kind of round robin those. The first one is around Simon Says, launching AI extensions for Adobe Premiere. And, and really there's a lot here I want to talk about in the caption and it would say transcription space, because I think now with all these available tools in the AI space that can do this, what a human used to have to do, we can now do with a computer, really sets us up for being able to add more transcription and more captioning. And they are two different things, right? Closed captions and transcription, obviously they follow two different bills, one for people who speak different languages and the other one for people who just want to read it rather than see it. And now this is built directly into Adobe, and we're seeing this so we're sort of at the production level where we're producing content. We now have the ability to produce the transcript as well, and not just that, edit via the transcript. So really exciting front on that. Chris, since you deal more with the VMS side of the platform, how important is captioning in your space? How much of it are you seeing?
Oh, it's absolutely vital. And what we're seeing now is not even so much, a couple of years ago, the question was whether or not we need to have something that addresses the captioning need. Now it's more advanced to, how quickly can we have captioning that translates into different languages, and how can we utilize AI to make captioning more efficient, and maybe for live events versus asynchronous video. So the captioning conversation is pretty robust in these days, for sure.
And who's driving that conversation when you're talking with the customers, or where the customers are asking you? Who is it that's saying we need captioning?
Well, I think a lot of schools nowadays have an accessibility department. And so what we've seen is part of the vetting process when they're looking to evaluate a solution like Panopto is they have the accessibility team looking at how it meets their needs as it relates to, the basic requirements. And then in some cases, even more sophisticated needs that we're starting to uncover nowadays too. So it's a very robust conversation. We're typically seeing that, like I said, from IT, but also in conjunction with accessibility departments.
Got it. Jordan, can you throw up the Slashdot article there? And it's, this is something really just quick and clean, but this is just the number of companies that have sort of entered into this space that are doing AI captioning. I thought this was interesting because there's just companies I've never even heard of before are now out there and accessible, that are generating captions, or at least being a plug-in to any of these platforms. So, I mean, it's quickly growing in terms of the number of places you can get captions.
I have it. Hold on. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so if you scroll that, there's like 10 companies here, 15 companies here, and I think I've heard of 2 of them in terms of people who have are kind of jumping into this space. Now there's an article on Panopto, if you can jump to that one next, and it speaks to the difference between captioning and transcription. And I think this one's really relevant for sort of the space nowadays. And Chris, I don't know if you want to just kind of throw in the differences here, because there's a different process. Captions and transcription are 2 very different processes.
Yeah, they are. And I think, to your point, we're having a lot of conversations with some of these folks where, the simple terms is, captions essentially transcribe dialogue, whereas, the transcriptions are sort of more taken advantage of after the fact. And so, there is a need for both. But, when it comes to that, synchronous versus asynchronous learning, that's really where both of those fit in. With the asynchronous component, the transcription is there. A lot of times folks who don't even have accessibility needs use the transcriptions just as a better way to learn and understand the information. Whereas captioning, essentially, like we're all familiar with the closed captioning at the bottom of the screen. That definitely comes into play too, both synchronous and asynchronously.
No, agreed. So next article up is 3Play Media and just the importance of captioning. Ron, you guys have such a strong broadcast side to your business with the capture cards and and just the other appliances. How often are you seeing customers request either captions, embedded captions to be pushed through the stream, or even just engaging you guys from a hardware standpoint to work with the captioning systems?
Yeah, good question. Absolutely. We're seeing it all the time. Basically, as you know, and as you mentioned, we come from the broadcast world. Also, we leverage our high-end encoders in the military markets. We're able to bring this technology down to this educational product for media capture, and it's just so vitally important. Also have some feedback in regards to what a great job Panopto does in their software. I'm uniquely situated in that I have 2 sons at university, at Santa Clara University, and the one's a senior and has been using the Panopto solution with Matrox for about 3.5 years now. And so he is a testament to using it all the time and how important the captioning is in his own learning process.
Yeah, no, it's huge because so much of the time now we're distracted. We have multiple things going on, and being able to read it is just so much cleaner in that way. And I would say, part of that last article there really plays to the fact that, in many environments, captioning is a requirement, a legal requirement to ensure that, you've got captions available. And I think sometimes people overlook it, thinking, well, we're not being requested, so therefore I don't need to do it. But there is sunset laws here or visibility laws here that require this. And so it's definitely one to look at. If your platform doesn't have it, definitely talk to these guys about getting it. I want to pivot a little bit off of this. We're going to come back to captioning a little bit more later and kind of where it fits into the platforms. Silas, you've been a little silent over there, but you chose some articles to talk about today and something specific. Fire it, man. What is it that you wanted to bite into?
Speak up. Really the biggest thing, if you follow tech news and anything really in the kind of tech ecosystem, you really haven't been able to escape this at all. The Apple Vision Pro has just been making huge waves, and I think it was CES, the show it was announced, or I'm not exactly.
No, it was their own show.
It was their own. Okay, I know it was shown off at a few shows too, but they have this giant landing page that kind of overviews the whole thing, and it's very long, so scrolling through it might be a little unpractical on here, but just some basic tech things about it, where some other VR headsets where they have the basic and actually VR is the bad word to Apple now. They're calling it spatial reality or mixed reality, and they've
just like Apple to give it a name and make it sound like it's new. Come on.
Exactly.
And technically it is and it isn't VR, because if we go into like what it is, it's kind of projecting. It can do just outside and it can do a little bit of just inside the headset, from what I was like hearing people talk about it from the few reports of people who have been able to try it out. And it's basically a standard kind of VR headset, but with everything just like turned to 11 with the amount of cameras and sensors that are on it. There's way more sensors than most of the like headsets on the market even have nowadays, where they can do motion tracking and way better than any other headset can do, just because a lot of headsets before, they just didn't have either the computational to track hands that well. So instead of having like actual handheld controllers like some do, they just do pinching. And I saw a video or pinching and dragging and just different gestures, and a video by Mr. Brownlee, one of the biggest tech YouTubers.
Marcus.
He was showing off. He was kind of talking about how he could just sit there and just kind of casually just like grab his finger and like kind of throw it around, and how like precise it was. And he was like, he mentioned how it felt like magic. How he doesn't normally call tech things to be magical.
But it better at $3,500 a headset.
And that's the catcher of, okay, yeah, it's $3,500, where it's like, all right, is this going to be practical? And Apple's kind of take on it is, this is going to replace your TV, this is going to replace your iPad, this is going to replace everything. Once this is like embedded into the society of like the solo version of taking content, and this is really what it is, it's really just made for content. Games aren't really talked about yet. It's just the most insane way to be able to take content in, because instead of having a big giant flat screen TV, I can throw it up on my spatial headset and I can stretch the screen to be as big as I want. And because they have 4K lenses in there, it still looks really sharp. It looks like pretty much like a 4K TV.
Okay, but let's be fair though. All of this that you're talking about exists now in Oculus, in Vive. I mean, this is not new. Apple paints a pretty picture here, but everybody else is coming to the table at half or less for the price, and and is doing most of the same things, if not all of them. So I truly believe that this box is a dev box. This is what Apple is putting out there for developers to develop the next wave of applications. Because let's face it, this is not a mass market product at $3,500 a piece. Right? I mean, raise his hands. Who's getting one, right? No. I mean, it's between that and eating dinner next week. I'm going to choose dinner. But I like the second article that you chose here. So Jordan, let's bring that in, because to me, that sort of paints a picture of what the future looks like from an education standpoint and how VR can fit into that. And I want to tie it to another article.
I really like this article too, and just looking through, I was looking for some articles, and this actually kind of tacks on to my whole opinion of technology in general for the education. And they can be a little slower, and because education is such a huge marketplace where you kind of have to give everyone a little bit of time, and it also depends on where they're at, and are they collegiate, are they just K-12? And where will they implement things like this? And they talk about 0 to 2 years, it's just skepticism. 3 to 7, they'll experiment. 8 to 10, there'll be some integration. And then at the end of that point, it gets pretty widespread. And that you can kind of see that through the last 10 years or so, where computers have been around, but kids started getting Chromebooks and things like that in the last before COVID-ish, and then it just exploded because the need was there and everyone was doing it. So this is something that, maybe the cutting edge, like colleges and universities, will use it in some learning aspect, but it definitely could be used in a K-12. It just might take some time.
Well, and we had an article a couple weeks ago talking about students who were ill or were disabled, and how them being able to engage in class remotely changes everything, right? So imagine a kid sitting at home who's, if there's a 360-degree camera sitting in the center of the classroom, and that student can actually look around the room via their headset and feel like they're there, have conversations, see the other kids, and engage in class. And there was an more interesting one, which was students who, or kids who are remote abroad, right, in the military, or and being able to stay in school, the school that they go to when they're back home, right, and be able to stay. So I think all that is tied together, where to me that's the future of VR in the classroom space, is really giving people the ability to continue going. I mean, do we ever need a sick day again or a snow day with all these technologies? Okay, so let me tie that in. So there's an article in Campus Technology, Jordan. I don't know if you have that one handy. We'll toss it in the chat if not. And it's talking about the number of students that actually view and they call it Zoom classrooms, but being able to go remotely, and how they never want to go back. And it's something like 76% say, yes, this was helpful to my educational process, and how many of them want to continue having that option of being able to be a remote student, right? And catch up on a class. And I think, Chris, that's right in where you guys come in, right? Is enabling the modern high flex classroom. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that article, because as of today, when it comes to the Panopto platform, Zoom is actually the number one video ingestion source, over the last couple of years, based on this new HyFlex model. And so when it comes to, and I think going back to that article you were just sharing about the new Apple product, it's not necessarily a revolutionary thing. When it comes to higher ed and ed tech, it's always a gradual adoption of these different things. And so, when it comes to Zoom, what we're seeing is, yes, while students, love having that option of being able to just kind of learn from home, but a lot of the schools give them the flexibility to pick one or the other. So to your point, if you are sick, you don't have to miss out on attending class. You can attend class virtually, but then the very next day or two, if you're feeling better, you can go right back onto campus. And so to give people that flexibility, the other thing that we're seeing too is, as it relates to the non-traditional student, like adult learners who are working full time and who are, maybe running a family or whatever, they can still, plug into higher education in a way that they were never able to before. And so I fully agree. I think tools like Zoom are here to stay. And I think it's the schools that are sort of like the leaders in the space are adapting to that and giving the students the flexibility of options.
I could see AR for the adult, where you could wear your headset and go to class while you're working. I mean, doing two things at once, that's the ultimate multitasking. I'm in on that. Ron's like, oh no, please. All right, let me drag one more in here. And we brought up HyFlex, and I think we need to kind of explain what that is a little bit. So Jordan, if you want to grab the EdTech article, and folks, we'll plug all these articles in the show notes so you can catch up with them later.
By the way, everybody, there's some issues with the chat on Vimeo. So I just posted a link on the site. If you just refresh your page, you'll be able to join the actual Vimeo link and participate there.
Perfect.
Sorry. What the EdTech one?
Yeah, the EdTech article,
Yep,
and this is really explaining HyFlex. Now, this is one of the new terms where every year we get a bunch of new terms, but HyFlex is sort of the next term in education. Chris, you probably know as much as anybody about this, so I'm going to start with Ron. Ron, what is HyFlex as you know it? See how I did that there?
That's beautiful. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think HyFlex refers to the ability to learn a multitude of different ways, right? So not only attending the classrooms, but maybe going in afterwards and being able to review the actual notes that you've taken. And also, it's very interesting. We talked about Zoom earlier, right? How many Zoom recordings have you initiated but never went back to because it was just too much? You just couldn't get to that information. One of the things that Panopto's done very well is the keyword search, right? Being able to bring those terms up and very quickly bring up the relevant video. That's something that the Matrox hardware enables, ease of use, and really lets you go back and review that information. So again, I'm hitting up my son who's a senior, asking him how he uses it day to day, and he's really touting the fact that you can go back into a class and review the questions also being asked, right? So you go in and maybe spend a little bit more time with that one question that the one student asked and really get their perspective. And if you don't even get it the first time, you listen to it again, right? The repetition, and even having it available to you offline if you can go ahead, if you have a flight to take or a car ride. Students are using this in a multitude of ways, sometimes not even just listening to the audio, but doing the video and audio together. They have so many options now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, how big is the term coming HyFlex now? I mean, how much are you hearing about it out there in the industry?
Oh, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. It's even to the point now where there's some institutions that actually have kind of branded it with a term other than HyFlex. And so when you go to XYZ University and they say, yeah, we have, Tiger viewing or something like that. It's actually like how they label high flex, but it is becoming so prevalent. And I love it. I think it blurs the lines, which is what students have come to expect, especially over the last few years, in this pandemic and post-pandemic world. They need to have that flexibility, and I think it immerses them even more so in the learning experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so they're doing that, give it a new name, and it's suddenly something that nobody's ever heard of before.
Right.
It's very much an Apple thing. I only say that because I'm an Android fanboy, so I just love to poke the Apple bear. But it's so yeah. There's a group, highflexlearning.org, that's really big on this, pushing this conversation. There's a bunch of great tutorials and information there, and obviously that is a piece of the story. You still need good hardware sitting behind it to kind of make it all work. So there's a good reason to engage your Matrox team for that.
A little salty this wasn't a thing like when I was in high school.
Well, yeah, well, I was a home study brat, so this was my only thing. It's that's half the fun. All right, we're gonna jump into a little aha. So if everybody will grab their links, and we're gonna who's driving this one? Silas, are you driving aha?
Nope, I'm
I
gonna
think
be driving
Jordan is.
Or are you, Jordan? Who's got it?
Oh, I'm driving it. I'm driving it.
All right, so we're gonna play hot or cold. If you've got the link, Chris and Ron, you're gonna have a question. You get a certain amount of time to give it a thumbs up or thumb down. Are you hot on it or are you cold? So let's engage.
All right, here we go.
All right, first one up. High flex learning is the way of the future for K through higher ed. Write your thoughts on there, hot or not. And don't forget your name so we know who answered what.
Wow, that was easy.
All right, looks like we got a lot of hot. So, I mean, Chris, justify.
Shocker.
You. What?
Shocker.
Shocker. Yeah, shocker, right? So, okay, Chris, justify. Why do you think you said it, high flex is sort of the future. Why do you think it's hot though? What makes you think it's going to stick around?
Well, I think the pandemic was the game changer. I actually had the honor of giving a commencement speech at my kids' high school graduation, and I mentioned to that graduating class, this was just last month, that graduating class were freshmen when the pandemic hit, and so their experience has been nothing but this virtual learning combination style. And so now that they're going into college, it's the expectation. And so, but that was the same effect as folks in grade school, K through 5 in some cases. And so I think it's here to stay. And now that those folks are moving into the higher ed space, it's definitely hot.
Got it. Jordan, let's bring up the next. All right, Apple's new Vision Pro will make an appearance in classrooms in the next 2 years. Hot or not? I think you all know what I'm going to say on this one. Seriously, Silas. Freezing? Freezing cold. Okay, so Silas, since you're the one who's most interested in that particular planes, why? What makes you say freezing?
Well, for one, it's not being released till sometime next year. So
yeah,
will it make an appearance? Maybe in like max 10, 20 universities, maybe-ish. So maybe not in 2 years. The key there is 2 years. But if you gave that, if you added 10 to that, I would say lukewarmish hot.
So I have to say that VR, and Jordan's going to yell at me for this, but VR is still a solo operation. And in a classroom with a lot of people around, you miss out on the collaboration of being with other people. And I think it is a remote tool, not necessarily an in-classroom tool. That would be
I think one of the biggest things I saw from a study was the medical field and being able to actually have visual models in real sizes for like surgeries and such to see that actually be able to happen is a lot better than a video or a textbook. So
yeah, no, that's true. I can absolutely buy in that. Higher ed. All right, next question. Let's keep going here. AI transcription adds a significant value to any platform it's implemented in. All right, Ron, you say hot. Why?
Yeah, so one of the questions I asked my son again at university was how does Panopto do a good job in terms of the transcript and all the information that's provided? And he said even if the teacher is speaking very softly or may not have English as their first language, it's doing a fantastic job. And that's tough to do in a lot of instances. So AI can only help Panopto in this effort. And obviously, if you have it recorded, you want to get it right the first time. So AI can only help.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I love the fact that we've got people here that actually have kids using this stuff, right? I mean, because we're not textbook implementers here. We've got real life experiences. But I will tell you, if we go back a number of years, I mean, AI transcription is not new. It's just better than it was 3 to 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
And if I go back, even as much as 3 or 4 years, there was always like, hey, we're really good at English unless you're Texan or from the South, right? It's like, what do you got against Texans? Come on. But I mean, because, there was colloquialisms that, that Jordan likes to make fun of me about and slangs and things that, regionalisms,
But
so
you're
to
not
speak,
from
that
there.
don't
You're
translate.
Not from there.
Say, what? What?
I said you're not from there. You're from California.
They have English, and then they have Australian.
Yeah, well, Californians have their slang too. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Next question. Apple will be our spatial reality. What? Who? Seriously? Apple will be our spatial reality overlays. Okay. Who did this one?
I didn't make this whole slide deck or anything.
It was Jordan. Jordan's poking at me because I'm. All right. Fair enough. Let's just skip this one. All right. Let's get into the meat and potatoes.
Okay.
Jordan, let's jump into the slide deck. We got a lot of hardware and fun stuff to talk about. So this is good. But I mean, all this stuff ties back to the core concept of what U2 manufacturers do, right? Which is enable classrooms to create content, store content, and make it available. Chris with the platform side and Ron with the hardware side, getting it into the platform. So these two things become ultimately important. We got slides, right?
We do.
There we go. Okay, let's go ahead and punch into these. So lecture capture, that is the core of this, right? And when we talk about lecture capture, I mean, the reality is there's two major components here. There's the capture portion and then, of course, the cloud portion. So ultimately the reasons why, we read in a lot of this is the flexibility of being able to watch a class when we want to watch a class, catch a class that we may have missed, or go back and review a class. In so many of the articles I read, students talk about missing something or wanting to go back and review, and so having that ability to go back and review the content and maybe even zone in on specific pieces. Chris, you guys do a great job of maintaining the individual streams, sort of the cameras from the presentation, and be able to view those, and as Ron mentioned earlier, even indexing that data so you can get back to the right spot quickly.
Right.
So these are important, and Jordan's got a great point here, alternating learning styles or alternative learning styles. Not everybody learns the same way. Some people learn by doing, some people learn by hearing, and some people learn by writing it down. And so lecture capture gives us that ability to kind of flex between those different versions, and do it over and over again. So, the big question is the why, right? Why are we implementing it? And I think it falls into all of these. Chris, what do people tell you that why? What is their big why for doing this?
Well, I think it goes back to that equity in learning. It's sort of an expectation at this point in the game. Whereas I think when Panopto was founded 16 years ago, it was a nice to have when it comes to lecture capture, and I think at this point it's now a need to have, and it's an expectation that the students all expect. And what it does is it opens up so many different facets of learning. To be able to flip the classroom, to be able to, extend lessons beyond what you teach in the class, and just so many different aspects of it that I agree 100%. It's a need to have at this point in the game.
Yeah, I mean, there's a piece on here on equivalence, and I think we brought this up. I remember my televised courses when I was in college. You went and got a VHS tape and then watched it in a lab by yourself. You didn't have the ability to ask questions in the moment. right? And I think now we've got this where we can still interact, we can still be a part of the conversation, even if it's post, right? Because we can chat with the teacher either in real time or they can catch it and chat back with us while we're watching it. So I think there's this level of equivalence, or equity, as you called it, that it wasn't available 10 years or more ago.
So
Yeah,
let's
there we
go
go.
into why.
Comes into
Let's go into why.
Into
we're
why?
doing this. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what is the why? Ron, what do you hear? Ron, well, you've got kids that are out there using this. What is their why, right? Well, how are they engaging with? What is it doing for them?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Like nobody wants to fess up to not making it to a class, right? But obviously, that gives them the ability if something happens, they have the ability to go in and now you're reading all these articles about how important sleep is to these students, right? So in the past, we were always told by our parents, like, don't take naps, you be to every single class on time. We're spending a lot of money on these universities and the education in general. Let's make sure to have the students learn in the best way that they're used to learning. So if that's a mixture of the HyFlix learning and that's how they're being successful, I think we need to run with that. And it's obvious the universities are supporting that way of learning as well. So as Chris said, it's really transitioned from a nice to have to a must have, I think, in most of the universities today.
Yeah, and Jordan, going back to some of the slides, I mean, remote HyFlex learning, I mean, one of the great one is absences. You just mentioned it right there. You can't always make it to every class. I mean, how many kids with the cost of college these days are working while they're going to school, and occasionally, work is going to get in the way, or they're just going to be exhausted from working a restaurant the night before. So being able to have that capability of catching what you missed, or not having that excuse to ever miss anything. Evaluation is a good one. So, we see more and more of this type of technology being implemented now to evaluate new teachers, people that are testing, doing some form of testing where they have to produce or perform a task, and they can remotely view it or just record it and watch it later, right? So you don't have to have proctors necessarily right there the whole time. So that becomes a powerful one.
Yeah, absolutely. Interestingly enough, what the Mavic SKU actually allows you to do is not only can you do the capturing, but it also does a proxy stream out to whoever's operating that at the university level. So they can check everything is up and running. It's not always the professor who has to start and stop the recording itself. There also might be something that the professor wants to redact. Maybe a student has questions later on that don't need to be shared with everyone. So they have a lot of flexibility to do that, and you can do that from a remote location, which is so important today.
Absolutely, and the simplicity of a student be able to run their own lecture capture, right? You guys have implemented very simple buttons on the front panel where you can walk up and just pop, and you're up and running.
Absolutely.
And if I can just say something to that point, I got to give a shout out to Matrox and the Mavex, because it is one of only, I think, two different Panopto signature certified appliances, meaning that we co-engineered the Mavex with Matrox, and the expectation is it's plug and play, it's good to go. Again, going back to that ease of recording and doing whatever you need to do in the classroom, they work very synergistically. It's awesome.
Nice. It is good to have good hardware partners. All right, what are some of the best reasons to choose Matrox and Panopto for an all-in-one lecture capture solution?
Did I just jump the gun on that one?
I know.
No, you pretty much it was like perfect. Jordan texting me, "Ooh, we're jumping right to the question." I mean, Ron, give us your answer first.
Yeah,
Why choose Matrox?
So the most important thing, and Chris alluded to it, is ease of use, right? A lot of times people were in the past relying maybe on a PC in the classroom, which, that brings a host of other problems. Even if you the teacher puts a nice sticky label on it saying, don't turn off or don't reboot, inevitably the system goes down, there's a Windows update, a blue screen of death, something goes wrong with that system, and you're talking about a whole nother service level to get that up and running. And you don't want it, the most important thing is you want that product to be reliable. It has to be bulletproof. The teacher's not going to give the same lecture twice. They really want to make sure to get it right the first time. So that's why it's so important that easy setup, ease of use, and just a bulletproof product. Our product has a 2-year warranty. There's an option for an extended 3 years after that. And again, you just want ease of use, the product to do its job and get out of the teacher's way.
Yeah, and that's ultimately super important, right? Because what we don't want is the technology to be a distraction to the teacher, right? And be sort of like, oh, I'm too focused on this. And you mentioned a really good one there, which is, using a Windows appliance. The big issue there is, let's just say there's a power cycle, right? There's a brownout, right? Well, you're waiting for that computer to boot up. You're waiting to go in and find the right software and to get all the settings correct again, versus an appliance like yours, which powers right back up into its last state and gets you right back where you need to be. And so ultimately the appliance approach for this is far better, than trying to solve this with, a Windows box or any other, software OS at that point. So just going into the Mavics a little bit. So Ron, walk us through what we've got here in the box. Tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so basically it's a bulletproof all-in-one appliance, so a media capture device. And basically we're able to take 2 inputs and get them out to the cloud using Panopto's software. It's basically the only unit that's signature certified, and it has Panopto's name on it, so they believe in it. And it's worked out tried and true. We work very, very closely with the Panopto sales team as well. They're recommending our solution to their customers because they know it's set and forget. Very little in terms of setup time, and then once the product is up and running, it just works. And I also have a unique perspective here as well. The son I mentioned, not only does he attend Santa Clara University, but he's in media services. So he's actually goes in, and if there's a problem with a projector or lighting or anything at all, he's the one who has to go in. That's his job. He gets paid for it, and he has to make sure things are right. So again, I'm getting firsthand feedback from him that things are all well in the Matrox world at Santa Clara. And the fact that the Panopto sales team continues to recommend our solution is a big win and feather in our cap as well.
Are you paying him for this feedback? I mean, is he on the payroll with you still?
Other than school support?
Yeah, right.
University is very expensive. I'm sure he's getting his money's worth.
Yes, it is. Good times, good times. A couple of points on this one. So in this box here, you've got how many inputs, video inputs?
Yeah, so there's 2 video inputs, but what we've enabled is the ability, and we worked with Panopto on this. We had some feedback from Santa Clara and some other universities as well, is sometimes they would like up to 4 inputs, right? For if they have a different capture system, multiple cameras, and again, we enable that. We have the ability to have 2 Mavixes in the classroom, and then Panopto has the ability to see that unit as one unit and control it all as one unit. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Pay for the dual if you need it. For quad, we can put 2 of them in a room. And what we've done for universities oftentimes is if they have a substantial number of quad rooms, we work with them on the pricing as well, because we want to enable the solution that they want at the price they want. So we always encourage those customers to come to Matrox. We provide an evaluation unit. They can have it for up to 90 days. Put it through its test cycles. If they have questions, we have pre-sales support. Panopto also helps out on that end, and that's how we close business, and it makes for happy customers.
Yeah. So I shamelessly asked you that question because it pivots us a little over to why, right? And oftentimes when you talk about a dual or a quad, what that means, and it's multiple inputs, because in many of these environments, you not only have a primary camera, right, that is on the teacher. You might have a student camera that's looking at the audience, and then you've got the content, side of things. So any presentations, there may be doc cameras or lab cameras. So it's never these classes are never just one camera anymore, or just one source. So specifically, you're encoding multiple channels of content, video, camera, whatever it may be, and sending them all up to Panopto into Chris's platform. So Chris, talk to us on the receive side. What do you guys do with all that data once you get it?
Well, it's interesting because we do a lot of things with it, right? And it's actually at the the discretion of the faculty or the instructional designer as to how they want that experience to be for the viewer, for the student. Like there's some scenarios where you want to. In fact, Panopto is very heavily used in a lot of medical schools, nursing schools. And so when they're doing certain, labs or different, demonstrations, to be able to have the multiple cameras and have the viewer be able to pick and choose different camera angles as they're watching the stream, is one example. And there's also other examples where you want to force specific video sources to surface up in the playback at certain times, so you don't give them that flexibility. You can keep it very rigid. But all of that is at the discretion of the instructional designer or the faculty. And the other thing too is when it comes to, I hear a lot about repurposing content. And so let's say if you're doing like a video over PowerPoint and they're using the Mavex to capture all those different sources, because the PowerPoint is captured as a separate stream within the video session, you can actually go in there and update slides, remove slides, replace slides. And so you can repurpose content semester after semester, year after year, and just update the necessary slides without having to re-record entire content. And so there's just a lot of things when we have those multiple streams coming into the system that it makes for a very rich and dynamic video learning experience.
I've heard so many stories over the years too of certain teachers being rock stars, right? Certain teachers, opening up their class to students from other campuses and having access to that content and being able to create social media clips, be able to take nuggets of that teacher and publish them to get more people excited about what they're learning. I mean, just access to all this data becomes ultimately very, very important. Mm-hmm. But the idea that, the sort of, I call it the choose your own adventure model, where you're bringing in all that data, the different camera angles, and the students can decide later, what is it I want to see? Right. So Jordan's got a slide for us. Let's go ahead and bring this one in. This is just a little bit about the workflow so people can understand kind of what this might look like. Now, granted, I would never choose that microphone, and neither would Jordan.
There were very few.
Yeah,
very,
very
few.
Star? But we've got, obviously, a very simplistic workflow here is a 60/20, as we showed off earlier, with the laptop and the a camera plugging into this. Now, guys, let me ask you a question. How often are you seeing our AI cameras or auto tracking cameras in these classrooms?
I mean, I wouldn't know specifically. I mean, anecdotally, we hear about it from time to time. But I wouldn't be able to kind of quantify it specifically, but it is out there and it's pretty commonly used from my experience.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because over the past couple of years, everybody has re-released their cameras as an auto tracker now. Mm-hmm. Like there isn't a company out there that doesn't have an auto tracker, and I would think from an education standpoint, it's one thing to have somebody running the the Matrox Panopto kit, and ideally it shouldn't be run by anybody, right? It should be sort of automated, but the camera is always the missing link of how is it going to follow, and maintain. So all these new auto tracking cameras to me are a perfect combination.
We actually released during the pandemic a browser-based recorder for Panopto, and anybody can go and test it out. It's at panopto.it. But within that browser-based recorder, it actually has AI that does tracking. So because we saw a lot of faculty recording content from their home, and they didn't have the PTZ cameras, and so you can set it so as you're moving around, it will actually track you, even if you're using just a basic webcam. So cool. Yeah.
See, there it is. You are implementing auto tracking. All right, Jordan, I really want the in-class one. No, go back one. I just think this is a great, and this is like the crux of it. In-class discussions can't be replicated, but it can be recorded. And to me, every moment in a classroom is gold. And I often talk to our own team members sometimes about it when we're in training and they don't ask a question. I said, you're not only robbing yourself, but you're robbing your teammates from whatever that answer was, right? So no matter how stupid you think it is, ask the question, because you never know when somebody's going to want that data. And of course, we record it all, so I can say later. All right, take me to the last question here, Jordan. All right, so how do you see clients using Matrox and Panopto to encourage collaboration and facilitate discussion? I mean, so what are you seeing out there that is pushing the boundaries of the education side? Chris, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've seen most recently in the last couple of years is when it comes to that workflow that you showed before with the microphone. In addition to that is like a general classroom microphone that is picking up the conversations that are taking place in the classroom. And so as long as that's captured as well, then Panopto has a discussion feature. So even if you are watching it asynchronously, you can add to the discussion by posting your own comments or even asking a question. You know, you can say, hey, I heard Jimmy say this, that, and the other. You know, what about if we in class tomorrow talk about this, that, or the other in addition? And so just ways that you can interact with what happened in the classroom, even if though you weren't in the classroom, but using the Mavex to have those additional sources feeding into the Panopto recording is something that we see quite often.
Beautiful, beautiful. Ron, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so, you know, at the university level, so many of the dorms and classroom facilities now, they actually have these they look like mini corporate offices where the students can go in and they can rent their time or schedule their time where they can go in at a group setting. And this is fantastic for playback of the video when they're studying for midterms or finals. They can get their study group together in one room. They can play back relevant classes that they might want to bring up and ask questions among each other even. So again, it goes back to the HiFlex, but so cool. All these different options that they have available at the university level that just were not available even 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because we think about that, like me ingesting this data later as sort of a solo process. Like, okay, I missed a class, I'm going to go watch it. I didn't think about a group of students getting together and saying, hold on, did we get that right? Let's go back and watch it together, right? I mean, the concept of study group still lives, apparently. So that just makes sense. Love it, love it. Look, I think we've kind of managed this one. I mean, we were going to make this our last conversation on lecture capture for the year, but I thought, so if we're going to do it big. And primarily because we're in that season where our vendors, our dealers, our end users are saying, okay, we're outfitting our classroom for next year. We're prepping the next season. And so it's kind of why we wanted to bring you guys on and talk about this some more, which is it's not too late to go out there and work with your local college campus on what's next. Now, we did have a couple of issues with the chat. I apologize to audience members. We will get this reposted as quick as possible. If you have questions, as always, you can email them to engineering@JBanda, sales@JBanda. You can hit the gentleman here direct. Chris, how do people reach out to you if they want to know more about Panopto?
My email address is as simple as it comes. It's just chris@panopto.com. I know my last name's a little bit trickier, so.
I am jealous. You got
it easy, huh?
Yeah, no doubt. Ron, how did they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so for myself, it's first initial, last name. So that's rrundell@matrox.com.
And if you're confused by how to spell it, it's right there on the screen, so don't get that one wrong. As always, you can reach me and Silas at engineering@JBanda or marketing@JBanda. If you have any questions, ping us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, watch the replay, share it with your friends. And of course, talk to your students about telling their college campuses we need more lecture capture. Gentlemen, any parting thoughts before we pass this one into the books?
I appreciate your time. This was a great opportunity to talk about the two companies, and very much appreciated, Nick, always. And Jordan, thanks for your help. Silas, fantastic view on the Vision Pro. I can't wait to get my hands on one.
Hey, all right, I'm coming to your house if you do.
Right. Yeah, it's a party, Vision Pro party.
There you go.
Well, I just want to say thank you for inviting us here, representing Panopto. Looking forward to continuing to work with JB&A and obviously with Matrox. It's been a phenomenal relationship thus far, and I look forward to strengthening it as we go along.
Absolutely. And folks, if you're interested in learning more about these, hit any of the team members here on the show. And we do have bundles. So if you want to stack these together and take that to your client as a complete kit with microphones, with sort of everything you need for a classroom, hit up the team at JB&A. We can help skew that up for you and give you the tools you need to go out to your customers. Other than that, Jordan, what do we got? You ready to get an outro?
Let's do it.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you much for being here. We'll see you on the next episode.